We Robot event.
Great.
It was
Mm-hmm.
crazy to watch. And I guess to that point, the reason why it was a show,
Uh-huh.
it
It was a
was
show.
it was theater. Tesla and by extension Elon Musk put on a tech spectacular show. It was fully designed, like it was a set. There was set
Mm-hmm.
design, there was lights, there was music. It was not your typical investor update.
Yeah.
Live crowd, full audience, which you heard in the recordings.
And they were obsessed with him.
They were obsessed with him, fully fan. I mean, he got an audience of fanboys, as I would too.
100%.
Yeah,
There was so much like, I love you. I love you, Elon.
yeah.
It was so cringe. That was
It was
really
super cringe.
unbearable to me, that part.
So Tesla was unveiling prototypes for three things, which I'm going to talk about: the taxis, aka the cybercabs, the robots, which are called Optimus, and the bus, which is called the Robovan. I don't know. He had a pronunciation for it. It was live streamed on X, so everyone was watching it. I'm going to talk about the three products and the implications, but I do want to just like high level for people to have a grasp of the basics before I get into the product stuff. The main thing, again, it was a show. The vibe was very futuristic. It was modeled after iRobot, which is a movie from 2014, a Will Smith movie, which it was modeled so much after that that the director of that film was like, "Hey, what the fuck?" Like, it looks exactly like
Exactly. It's a dupe. It's crazy.
Elon arrives in a cyber cab. It was very fun show. It was a show. It was
Super entertaining.
very entertaining. Yeah, robots, they're dancing, whatever. Before I get into the details, I do need to say the stock price is down 9% after the show. 9-10%.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It fell considerably. And the main point is that people were like, okay, fun, cool show, not substantive enough. He didn't have any details on rollout. He didn't have any details on everything about regulation, pricing. All of this stuff was very, very vague. He talked
Yeah.
for probably 15 minutes and he didn't get into the details that people have been asking him, in fairness, for years around the cyber cab in particular. A lot of details missing. But yeah, just going into this, know that the sentiment around it was, wow, that was really fun to watch, and also not quite enough to keep investors happy. So
Sounds like this podcast. We
okay.
don't have investors, so
We
that's
don't have
not
investors.
it.
We don't need to keep anyone happy. Okay, except for our listeners. And I hope that you guys are happy. Okay, so the taxis were very much the main event of the show. He's been talking about for years. I think 2016 he started talking about it. People have been asking him about timelines, what's going on, cybercabs, what's up. He has consistently said 2 more years, 2 more years, 2 more years. And
Yeah.
that is what he said this time as well. But we did get the first look at the prototype of what's going to be a fully self-driving vehicle called the Cybercab. No pedals, no steering wheel. So you're in it and it's a little computer
Crazy.
box that you're driving around in. It's marking the transition of going from supervised self-driving, which is what Teslas have now, to fully autonomous self-driving. So it was incredible to see. It is a prototype, and I think it's important. All the three things that he showed were all prototypes. I am personally very, very excited and very, very pro self-driving cars. I think it will result in a lot of lives saved. I'm on the road here in Tennessee and people are texting while they're driving. I think there's a lot of human error that happens on the road that could be prevented. Traffic efficiency, I think it can do a lot for giving mobility to people who don't or can't drive, disabled folks, elderly folks. Really excited about the possibility to lower emissions and also just all the crazy changes that it's going to make for urban planning when you no longer need parking spaces and parking spots. And also cheap. Operating costs will be around 20 cents per mile. And he's very much talking about it as a cab. So it wasn't really about like your car. It was being positioned in a way where it's like, this is going to be a fleet and you can buy cars and turn them into a fleet. But it was very much like, you'll probably have a subscription. It will come and pick you up and then it will drop you off at your destination and then it will go on and do other things. And so you're not going to be needing to pay for your own car if you don't want to, if you live in probably a certain type of semi-urban place.
Environment.
So it's cool. It's really cool. It's a really cool vision. He said it would come in below 30K in production in 2026, which I think is what a lot of the investors reacted to. Not enough there. There was some stuff that he did in the presentation around vision casting. We'll be able to turn parking lots into parks and green spaces. And he touched on that. But if I'm giving notes, he could have done a lot more to talk about the safety, the efficiency, the energy, the green spaces stuff, like how it will be transformative potentially for human life in such a positive way. And that was really missing, as well as like there has been a lot of questions on the rollout plan, the tech stack.
I will say I was pleasantly surprised by his opening notes were very much about basically tech optimism versus tech pessimism, and
Yeah.
that what he's trying to paint and what he believes is a world where technology makes the world a better place, where it's not Blade Runner, but it's these other versions of the future that are more efficient and brighter. And I think when we talk about the robot stuff, I have some thoughts around that. But I did like that as like a setting. A global note was like, it was all just very surface level. Like,
Yeah.
it didn't get into the nitty gritty on any of it.
Yeah. And maybe like that was what it was for. It was for my 8-year-old to watch and be like, holy shit, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And like, maybe that's fine. But I think if you are a Tesla investor, you've been hearing that for a while. And you're like, okay, well, what's the processing power? What are the sensors that you're using in autonomous vehicles? Hardware isn't the limit. We know how to build a car. It's the software. And those were the questions that felt like they were unanswered. Okay, the second thing was the Robovan, the bus, which I'm not going to spend a ton of time on. It's a party bus, basically. It was a surprise. No one expected it, but he was talking about the cyber cabs, and then he was like, and then for highly dense areas, we're going to be doing this bus, and the bus comes out. It can carry up to 20 people or things, goods. He's saying it's solving for high density. It's very prototypey. Like it seemed it would never last for 10 minutes on New York City streets. Like as soon as it hits a pothole, it's done. It had like
It
kind of a
just
flat bottom.
disintegrates.
Yeah.
I think for me, what was exciting about it was just this idea of the autonomous vehicle thing. It is so adjacent to Uber, and Uber can be so annoying. And the bus idea, the Robovan, I was like, oh, this feels like the future. They're constantly just showing up and they're taking you to wherever you're going and you're getting it with other people. And the efficiency around a bunch of people going to similar areas and that being able to cut down on congestion in highly dense urban areas. I could like really see that future in a way where autonomous vehicles, I'm always just like, aren't there just going to be a ton of more cars on the road?
Well, though, if it all plays out the way that I think people are hoping it will play out, is that there will be no more traffic because everything will be communicating. But yeah, I do think still there's like a
congestion,
which the vans would help solve for.
Right. So that was interesting and felt futuristic in a way that was exciting.
Yeah. And then the third thing was the robots. Humanoid personal assistant robots come marching out at the end of the presentation. And they came out marching in a group, which was, I don't know that I would have made that choice. It kind of had some sinister undertones. It was like a army of them that came out. And Elon starts talking about them, and he's talked about humanoid assistant robots in the past. So this wasn't a surprise necessarily, but it was the first we've seen the prototypes of them. And it's very much your personal assistant. It's going to water your plants. It's going to babysit your kids. It's going to walk among you, is what he said. Whatever you can think of, it will do. And
Twitter took that.
People thought of things. Primarily sex. So that was,
as you can imagine,
definitely the first thing that came up, which was reinforced by the cage dancing. There was a scene at the end.
I hated the cage
dancing. But he put the robots in a cage and played music and they danced and everyone was like, oh, I mean, I was thinking sex, but now I'm definitely thinking sex. So that was the final thing. Now, there has been a lot of, not controversy, but a lot of chat about the robots that they were remote controlled.
Okay.
So again, it's theater. It was a show that we were watching. There's been a lot of investigation that's been happening around this and nerds on Twitter trying to figure it out. And basically what people have come to is that they were walking on their own, that was AI, but that they were pouring drinks and they were like hanging out with people and talking to the crowds and that they were being remotely controlled and probably voiced by people because to be able to have a conversational robot in low light, that would have been an insane development. So, and that's not happened.
Okay, the two clips that I saw right after it came out that where I was like, whoa, this is crazy, is them, yeah, pouring a drink
Mm-hmm.
and like pulling on a draft, a beer on
Mm-hmm.
draft. And then the other was like this conversation that one of them was having with one of the Elon fans who was there at the show. And what was interesting to me is it was very conversational. And more than anything, it was interesting to see that man was like, you could tell having this weird experience of not knowing how to talk to the robot, but not wanting to like be rude. It was like really interesting. Like
Yeah.
they were like, "So where are you from?" And they were like, he's like, "Oh, well, I'm from Fresno." And they were like, "Oh, what neighborhood in Fresno?" And it was just a really bizarre experience
Yeah.
to witness
Yeah.
and to try to understand. And my thought was like, I would be the same. I would be doing so much emotional labor on behalf of this robot. I'd be like, I hope this robot understands that I think what's happening is extraordinary, that we're able to have this conversation.
Is the
And
robot mad at me?
is the robot mad at me? But like it was shocking to see that
Yeah.
interaction. But yeah, if it was remote controlled, then that's less interesting. But still, I think what he did successfully is you can see a world that he's trying to create. You could
Yeah.
see it where I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, what's exciting to me about all of these robots in and amongst us doing whatever we need them to do is what does it make possible for humanity when you think about creative expression or entrepreneurial endeavors? Like so much of what our day to day is taken up by is like a lot of mundane tasks that make it difficult to spend time with people you love or to work on side projects or whatever it is. And I think some of that stuff is really important. Like I think about, this is totally an aside, but Allison Roman,
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn based cook,
Mm-hmm.
book author, and she has this whole theory about not having too many kitchen tools
Mm-hmm.
because she's like, I feel like a huge part of what's important about cooking is this idea that you're like using your hands, that you're like touching the food, that you're like engaged with this process as a nourishment for your body.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that to be true around cooking. I really enjoy cooking, and it's like this really, it's like a life-giving thing. And one fear I have about like the robot world is that we're not doing any of those things anymore, and we're not like engaged in like the texture of life. But a positive would be folding your laundry and cleaning your bathroom and all of these things that take up a lot of time and space that are annoying frees you up to do all the things that are more important to you.
Yeah, I think that to that note, again, another note to Elon was that I think that the examples that he gave around what the robot can do for you were the wrong examples to give, to your point that like we don't want it to be doing the things that nourish us. We don't want it to be watching the kids. We want it to be cleaning the gutters or like I mean, I don't know, maybe someone finds some deep meaning in cleaning the gutters, but like mowing the lawn. And I even think the bartender example was probably the wrong thing to use because I think people really like talking
Being
to
bored.
bartenders and that's a part of the human experience that I think probably shouldn't be replaced by robots. And that felt like a miss.
I think one thing I want to say about what I have an articulation actually around the guy talking to the robot and what my experience of watching that and thinking about projecting onto this human man what his experience was is that I couldn't separate the idea that that robot would have emotion around the conversation, that it would have some feeling around like talking and trying to be smart and asking him where he's from. Like I can't imagine a being that doesn't have feeling.
Yeah.
Like it's conceptually, I can't get there.
I mean, I think that will be a thing that we're going to have to wrestle with as a human race. And seriously, like that's going to be I think a defining question. Is like they do or they don't, and if they don't, then how does the way that you treat them change? And if they do, how does the way that you treat them change? And
also, if we start to have, this is so hypothetical, but like if we have to start to have robots and we believe that they don't have emotion and we treat them as though they don't have emotion, like how does that start to map onto how we treat other human beings? Because we get used to treating these beings as emotionless.
Totally. And if there's like classes that start to arise as a result, and some of us are living on Mars and some of us are living here, and then there's robots, and who knows? But it's fun to think about, isn't it?
It's really fun to think about, and it feels maybe not in my lifetime, but in a lifetime, something that will be a reality, and that's pretty crazy.